Okay. All right. So yeah, I've kind of been involved in the whole agile development thing for quite a while now. I've been in IT for about 40 years and got into management pretty quickly. Honestly, a little faster than I would have expected. I really enjoy developing, and I still do that quite a bit. Um, but I was working at a time when waterfall was beginning to fail and looking for another way. And just, we were talking about this earlier this morning, just ended up being in the right place at the right time, just the right confluence of events. And I ended up getting involved in agility right after it kind of made its big bang on the industry. But over the years, teaching lots of CSMs and then CSPOs and coaching and helping organizations, I slowly began to realize that a lot of what I was teaching was leadership skills as well. So starting around 2010, 2011, I started getting into more of what does it mean to be a leader, so from the standpoint of how can I help a Scrum Master do a better job? But then it started really turning into what is leadership and what does all that mean? And Sarah and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago and thought a really cool presentation might just be how do we simplify leadership down to a set of tools, each of which are pretty easy to learn. So what it comes down to is shoot, yeah, I wanted to ask you about this too. So yeah, we want to simplify leadership down to some things that are really, really easy to learn. But as I go through the presentation, I'd love to hear from you guys as well. So what I built into the presentation is this thing called Slido. And without getting too deep into all the unnecessary details, Slido allows me to ask questions of you, and then you can in real time answer, and it appears right on the slide as we go. So if you don't mind, if you can, and if you prefer not to, you don't have to.
All the
But
feedback is anonymous, so you don't have to worry
yes,
about being singled out.
yes, we're not collecting names, not collecting data. Okay, this is just for us right here, and of course it'll be on the recording, but again, no names. So the way you do it is you can scan the QR code, or you can go to slido.com. And if you go to slido.com, just like open up a browser window on the side there. There'll be a little text box, top middle of the page. Type in this number, 2724621. Don't worry about the space, and it'll set you up.
You
And
can also
every
use
time
your cell phone. Just scan the QR code and it'll pop up on your cell.
Yep. Yeah. So you've got two ways to do it, depending on where you want to do it from. And if you ever get out of the session, don't worry. Every time I ask a question, the same information is going to appear on the screen. So you'll be able to get right back in again. So in fact, let's start with a question. Do you see yourself as a leader? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it and just pop an answer in there. And again, we're not taking names, we're not collecting data. We're not going to use this for anything. It's just for my purposes as we go through the conversation. So 4 people have been able to answer. I'll give you a second or two more. Let's see if anybody else wants to jump in there. We've got 14 on board. And while I'm giving you a couple more seconds there, I'm going to apologize up front. I'm getting over a cold. And for me, colds go right to the throat. Of course, right? Where else would it go for a trainer, right? So a little hoarse, a little coffee, but I'll get through it. I did one yesterday. I made it, so we'll be okay today. Okay, so a number of people have answered. There's another one. We're probably going to end up in that 70-30, 80-20 space, which is not uncommon. So I have another question for you. If you said yes, come on, you got to work with me here, slide. If you said yes, what is it about you, what you do, how you do it, that makes you, in your mind, a leader? No wrong answer here. This is a free text, so it'll just appear on the screen as you hit enter. Good, good, good. Inspire, encourage. I love that. Casting vision. Absolutely. Visionary leadership, for sure. So we have 4 more people typing. If you're not typing yet, jump in, jump in. Encourage others, demonstrate by showing how, great, show by example, helping others reach their goals, servant leadership, excellent. Heart, humility, care, on, ooh, I love it,
That's
okay.
really good.
Yeah, that is really good. True expertise, okay, so there's a little bit of expert power in there. Focus on relationship building, very good, yes, synergistic leadership. Lots of good stuff. So the first thing you start to see as these answers start to pop up is there's a lot of ways to look at leadership. There's leadership as a positional authority figure. There's leadership as servant leadership, which is what show by example does. Casting a vision, visionary leadership, synergistic leadership on relationship building. There's lots of different kinds of leadership, and they're all situational. You don't have to be a visionary leader or a synergistic leader. You can use the skills to be any kind of leader that you need to be at that moment in time. But the key is that it generally all breaks down into a short set of understandable and practicable skills. Okay. None of these skills are independently impossible to learn. They are rather straightforward. They just take practice. Like any good skill, it takes practice. And we're going to go through them: communication skills, strategic thinking, problem solving, decision making, delegation. And of course, we'll wrap the whole thing up. But, well, I keep thinking I know what slide's coming up next, and I don't. So let's just look at it as an overview. All right. What is leadership? Leadership is an essential capability for success in all areas of life. One of the things that I think it's really, really important to understand is that everybody is a leader. Okay. It's not a positional thing. It's not something that, I'm a leader because of the job I hold. That might be true, but that you're not a leader because of the job you hold. You're a leader because you're a human being and you use leadership skills because of the job that you hold. The reality is leadership is something that all of us possess or need to possess, which is what makes these skills so important to learn. Effective leaders have a toolbox of skills. Again, I use that terminology because I really want to break it down. You don't have to know everything to be a good leader. You don't have to know all of it to be a good leader. You really only have to study one skill after another, after another, after another. Ben Franklin, I don't know why I'm going here, but it just occurred to me as I'm thinking about it. Ben Franklin years ago had a little book, and in his book, he had 7 virtues, and they were like skills, just like the ones I'm showing you here. They really were. And then what he would do is on a page for a week, he would write one of the 7 virtues. And then he would start tracking the number of times every day during the week that he actually exemplified or used that virtue somehow. Humility would be one, but continuous learning, to put it in more formal, more modern speak. And that's what he did. Every page was a different week. Every page was a different virtue. And what he did is he just cycled through them like a toolbox. So that's what I'm recommending here. And we're going to explore each of those skills as we go. So let me ask you this. What are the most critical skills of a leader from your perspective? Now, this is going to come up as a word cloud. So if you happen to type in something that someone else has typed in, it will just get bigger. Listening, empowerment. Okay. Okay. Keep them coming. You can actually type in multiple words, multiple skills if you want to. I'm pretty sure this one allows multiple answers. Courage, emotional intelligence. Absolutely agreed. Humility, vision, servant leadership. Okay. Psychological safety makes its appearance. Good. Okay. 3 people still going at it. Good, 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 good. Keep going.
For those of you who have just recently joined, if you scan the QR code on the left side of this slide with your phone, or go to slido.com in a browser, you can join in on the whiteboard.
Ooh, a piercing psychological sensor. I love it.
Ooh,
To me, that sounds a lot like empathy,
yeah.
understanding where other people are. Yeah, that's really good. I love that. I love that phrasing. An eagle eye view. I love that. Okay.
Mm,
Courage, empowerment, positivity, responsibility. This is really good.
this is
It's really
great.
good. Yeah. Okay, a couple more seconds. We had a couple people typing and then it looks like they finished. Oh, there's one more. Okay.
Mm,
Now this is a really, really good list. And here's the thing. When I ask this question, I always get a pretty good list, but I've also noticed that people look at the list and it becomes overwhelming that, oh, how am I supposed to do all of that? I mean, let's just pick one, empowerment. Now what do I do, right? Don't worry. This is the reason I wanted you to list all these is I wanted you to see the list, but I also want you to understand that these are things that will happen by taking the toolkit skills we're going to walk through and just practice them. And I guarantee the more you practice them, be like Ben Franklin, cycle through them if that's what you want to do. But the more you practice them, the easier they get. And the more all of this just kind of happens. It's just because you're a human being, it has to happen. But these skills will get you there. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask you one more question. What do you think about this one? Is leadership an acquired skill, right? Something you can learn? Is it an innate talent, or is it really a combination of both? So I got two, okay, four answers. There we go, good. All right, we had like 12, 13, 14 people get involved on the last question. So I'm going to wait till we get up to about that. Just a few more seconds.
Stay. Do you stay?
Okay, that looks like that's where we're going to end up. So here's the thing about leadership. Having an innate talent helps. Okay, if some people are just born with the ability to communicate really, really well, to be very personable, to be very trustworthy, just because of the way they handle themselves. But let me be really honest about something. There's absolutely nothing that you can have innately that you can't learn just by working at it. Okay. So yeah, if you said both, you're absolutely right. It helps to have both. But what's really important, I need you to understand, is I run into a lot of people that say, I can't lead. I can't do that. You know what? When I was in high school and I had to do my first presentations in front of a class of about 15, 18, 20 people, I would fall apart. I was a disaster area. Okay. And now I pretty regularly speak to rather large groups. And do I get a little nervous? Sure, that's a good thing. It keeps you on your toes. It shows that you care, that's important to you to do a good job. But this stuff can be learned. You do not have to come out, grow up a suave, just so personal, wonderful person. Not all of us have that fortune in our lives. You don't have to be born with it. You absolutely can learn it. So let's talk about learning this stuff. Why does leadership matter? Because everything you do is about leadership. Even if you take it just down to you, because leadership, there's a category of leadership called self-leadership. So, anytime you've ever tried to break a habit or set a new one, anytime you try to lose weight or go on a diet or stop smoking or learn a new skill or try a new job or push yourself into outside your comfort zone, you are self-leading. That is what's going on at that moment in time. And what I've found over the years is that the better you can self-lead, the better you will lead others. So it always starts at home, okay? By providing your own vision, by inspiring yourself, okay? By enabling your own ownership of what you're trying to accomplish. Start there, but the skills are pretty much the same. One more question for you. I think I said the last one was my last one. It's not. I have a couple more, but I just want to, one more comparison I want to put out there, and then we're going to move into the skills. Do me a favor, compare leadership to management. What's the difference? What do you think? While you're typing, if it's not too annoying for me to be talking while you're typing, a lot of organizations out there on the planet right now conflate the two, that leadership and management are somehow the same. They aren't. And it's important to understand that because they're different skills. They derive power differently. They create goals and progress differently. Sometimes you need to be a manager. Sometimes you need to be a leader. So let's see what we got coming up here. Steve Jobs said leadership was about casting vision and management was about carrying out that vision. Yeah, I could see that. Inspiration versus taskmaster. Okay. Management tells you what to do. Leadership does it with you. Okay. Leadership focuses on people. Management focuses on product or progress or output. Leadership is a network of human dynamics driven by connection and purpose. Management is radically different with zero overlap. Interesting. I love seeing that. I agree. I don't believe there's a ton of overlap. Actually zero overlap is what's being said here. Management's controlling and managing. Leadership is about encouraging others to join you in something. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it too. Management gives requirements. Leadership gives empowerment. Yeah, I mean, I'm loving all of these. You got it. Management is about getting stuff done. It's about control, which I see there, and managing people. Well, it's hard to, management's about managing, but I get where you're going there. Leadership really is. It's about getting people involved instead of just saying, "Here's what we need to do. Go do it." And don't get me wrong, there are times when you need that. Okay. But leadership is, as you guys have said, inspiring people to follow a vision, to achieve a goal, to go beyond what just simply being told what to do. It's very, very important that you understand that there's a difference. And the big difference, and it's built in here too, also, is as a leader, people are not required to follow you. You do not have positional authority. You do not have positional power. You cannot make people do what you need them to do. They have to want to follow, which means that whatever you're going to do as a leader, as a scrum master, as a leader, as a product owner, as a leader, you're going to have to do it by building relationships between you and the people that you need to follow you, or they're simply not going to follow. And it's also, I think, worthwhile to say, you also need to be prepared for the reality that leadership is situational. You don't always have to lead to be a leader. Sometimes you're not the right person to lead. Let someone else do it. Don't turn it into a fight. I've seen that with a lot of teams. Oh, I'm the leader. No. You're a team member, and that makes you a leader every now and then when it makes sense. Scrum masters have very specific things that they lead to do, as do product owners. That's kind of the way you want to look at it. Leadership is not a position. It's a skill set. So let's get into the skills. I've been talking about them a lot, but let's really attack them. Communication skills, number one. You cannot do anything without good communication skills, which is not just talking, but listening as well, which was one of the items that came up earlier. It is absolutely essential in all areas of life. You cannot lead if you cannot communicate your goals, your vision, your concept, your caring, if you cannot communicate your empathy, if you cannot communicate your feelings. about someone or something. Visionary leadership, synergistic leadership. None of those things happen well if you can't communicate what you're trying to say and what you're trying to feel. As it says there, build relationships, solve problems, achieve your goals. Good communicators clearly and concisely convey their thoughts and both verbally and in writing. One of the things that I would strongly recommend that all of us get better at, because I see what a lot of people are writing these days on social media, and clarity is not really high on the list of things to be in a lot of technical writing that I've seen lately. Blog posts in particular, clarity seems to have fallen way to the bottom of the list. So yeah, when we talk about communication skills, and really developing good communication skills, number one, active listening. Okay. I coach all of my Scrum Masters. If you're gonna be a Scrum Master, every conversation you get into with a team member should start from what we call a coaching stance. Just listen, let them talk, listen, let them bounce ideas. Okay, until you're invited or it's obvious that you need to move to like mentoring. Hey, when I was in your shoes, here's what I did. Or teaching. Hey, here's what I would recommend, kind of a thing. Always be coaching. Always be coaching, and just listen. Let it come in. Hey, what happened next? Why do you think that happened? What do you want to do after that? What else could you have done? That's leadership, right? And when I teach this in my classes, I tell my students all the time, it's just no different than having your 8-year-old daughter come up to you and say, I need help with a math problem. And as a parent, you know the right thing to do here. The wrong thing to do is give her the answer and tell her to go away, because she's coming back with the next problem. You would never do that. But what you would do is what all of us would do, is help her figure out the problem, show her how to do it. That's what coaching is all about. It's in there. Just let her pull it out on her own. Clarity, please. Short words, simple words, far better. I have had an ongoing campaign against the word utilize. Okay, I don't know why. It's just that word, utilize, because you could just say use.
Jim, if you don't mind, I'd love to hop in for just a second here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I think he's really got something great to say here on the clarity and using simple and direct language. I taught debate for years at a collegiate level, and it was insane. Everybody was always trying to outdo each other on the fanciness of the words, to an extent that you're like, what are you even trying to say? And coming from that world and shifting into, I now teach kids Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a martial art, having to come up with different words that are simpler every single time I'm talking is taking me the other way. And what I've noticed is that when I'm speaking to a 2nd or 3rd grade level, where people can understand when they don't even know like the difference between an elbow and an arm, that it's also a lot easier for my adult students to understand what I am talking about. Not everybody has the same level of education as you do, so speaking to the common denominator can make it a lot easier for people to understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Used to be, honestly, it used to be a problem for me. I would overwrite. That was the level that I learned at, and I would write, and people would be like, I just don't get this.
Yeah.
And I realized over time, between clarity and conciseness, don't waste words. You don't need to. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Empathy. Try to work. You've all heard the golden rule: do unto others. Did you know there's another one? It's called the platinum rule. And it makes a lot more sense when it comes to empathy and emotional intelligence. Do unto others as they would have done to themselves. Okay. So in other words, don't put what you want done on someone else, what you would expect. Find out what they would expect. That one little thing is at the heart of all emotional intelligence, is understanding where that person is, not from your perspective, but from theirs. And of course, respect. You don't have to agree with someone. You don't have to even understand what they're saying, but there's no reason for a leader to be disrespectful or to allow disrespect on the team. Unnecessary. So tips for effective communication: be clear, be concise, tailor your message, know who you're talking to. Okay. If you're talking to people that are not anywhere near technically as inclined as you are, well, then change your approach, because they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand. And then you're going to be sitting there going, why are people disagreeing with me when they said months ago that they agreed with me? Well, because they never really did. Your message never got through. Be mindful of your body language and your tone of voice. It is estimated that in any conversation, 70% of it is nonverbal. This is why, emails and text messages can cause so many problems in terms of, wow, is that person angry at me? Because it's a partial message. So, when you're talking to somebody, when you're coaching somebody, even in a Zoom session, you can look disengaged and like you don't care, and that their time is not important to you and your time is. Okay. Be mindful of the image you're giving off, and the tone, pacing, cadence, word choice. All of these make a big difference. Always be open to feedback. Feedback is a gift. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to follow it, but you should always be appreciative of it, because the minute it stops is the minute you're in trouble. Always be looking for feedback, and be specific. Tell me how I did in this meeting. Tell me how I did delivering this talk. Don't, particularly if you're talking to a team member, or if you're a manager and you're talking to someone who reports to you, tell me how I'm doing. That's going to get you about as good a response as the question you asked. Okay. Again, it's like going to your kids and saying, hey, what did you learn in school today? Nothing. Be more specific. And practice. Okay, so I'm going to keep this moving because I know I'm running a little long. Let's go into strategic thinking. Strategic thinking, big thing, very, very important for a leader, because it's really, really hard to set a direction, have a vision, create synergy if no one knows where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, well, that's kind of the end of it. So see the big picture. What's the goal? Where are we trying to end up? What's your vision? When I teach product owners, it's not part of Scrum, but I really strongly recommend have a vision. Okay, what do you want to achieve? And when you write a vision, use a little mind hack that I usually use, which is write the vision as if it's already been achieved. Okay, so I do one of my examples in my classes that I do a lot is I want to write an app so that dog owners can get people to walk their dogs, sort of like Uber, where you go from point A back to point A with a pet. And the vision is 1 million dogs living healthful lives through daily exercise, as if it's already been done. You can do the same thing for yourself. Okay, not only your own self vision, but a vision for others. If it's written as if it's already been accomplished, the brain sort of goes, yeah, I can do that. Think ahead. Okay, I'm not talking about task level, break down the product backlog items into every little step. I'm saying, what problems do I have to solve to get to that vision? What capabilities do I not have to get to that vision? You don't need to be more detailed than that. Just kind of line up, what are the big dominoes we got to knock over? And if you're involved in Agile at all, you know that there will be dominoes missing. But you also know that over time, we'll figure out what they are. So it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. And go ahead and make plans. Just be careful with your plans. Okay. All plans are wrong, right? That's what I call Jim's first law of project management, is that if you create plans at the moment you know the least about what's really going to happen. So don't overdo it, because it's wrong. We live in a world that is changing constantly. And that means that any plan you can come up with today will probably be wrong by tomorrow. So don't overdo it. What does good strategic thinking help you do? So if you've got a good vision and you're looking ahead, you're thinking about what are the big dominoes I got to deal with, and you've got some basic plans to help you deal with them. What are the benefits? Well, number one, you're going to make better, more consistent, and probably faster decisions. You're going to make those decisions much more effectively. Okay, you're going to achieve your goals a lot more quickly. And that's a big one. I'm constantly teaching Scrum teams. It's not about the plan, it's about the goal. Okay, there are a million ways to achieve a goal. And when you create a plan, that's probably not the best way, but it's a good way to get started. Be prepared to change your plan and your goals will come along much faster. Be proactive and less reactive. It's not a bad thing for things to change as you go. That's not reacting. That's just life. Let it happen. And of course, the big benefit is you're going to gain a competitive advantage. Getting stuff out to the market faster than everybody else goes a long way. Okay, I want to keep this moving. I'll leave the material in the slides. I'm assuming we're gonna provide a copy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just so I can keep us on time, I'm gonna keep it moving here. All right, another skill, problem solving. So you've got this great plan, and then stuff just starts going awry. What do you do? Well, there's honestly, again, it just breaks down to a very simple set of steps. What's the first thing you do? Identify the problem. And remember, you're a leader. And if you're a leader, you've got people that are following. Don't do this by yourself. Get them into a room. What's the problem? Really talk about it. Okay. Don't shortchange it. Einstein is credited with saying, if I had an hour to solve the world's problems, I'd take 55 minutes to ask the right questions. Okay. If you've been doing this long enough, you know that one of the biggest problems we run into in organizations these days is we start solving things before we really know what the problem is. And I've coached my product owners and my Scrum Masters constantly. What's the problem? Identify the problem, state the problem, because solutions come easy, but they're often not even the right ones. Let's solve the right problem. Once you know what it is, then analyze it. Where did it come from? Why does it exist? What attributed to it? What would simplify it? Does it break down into smaller problems? Right? Basic refinement. Once you understand the problem, and a little bit of refinement is not a bad idea either, because the smaller the problem is, the easier it is to solve. Generate your solutions. And keep in mind, and I'm constantly teaching this to my developers too, there are an infinite number of solutions for any given problem. The odds of the first one you come up with always being the right one are very small. So don't just stop with one solution. Come up with a couple. Sometimes the right solution isn't the one that is the biggest and the baddest and the coolest. Sometimes, and this is an incremental development thing, sometimes the best solution is the one that just makes it work. Even if it's just for now, that's okay. For now might be good enough. So evaluate your solutions, implement your solutions, and then evaluate the effectiveness. And the funny thing is, this is all built right into Scrum. I mean, what does refinement do? What does planning do? It identifies the problem. We analyze the problem. We break it into smaller pieces. We solve the pieces. We build the pieces, and then we implement and we look at the result. That's called incremental development. That's called iterations. It's all right there. The whole problem-solving process is laid out right there for you in Scrum. Some basic tips, though, be really clear about the problem. I know I said this already, but I'm saying it again because it's so important and people pass this up so often. Know what the problem really, really is. Don't just solve something. Be creative, right? Divergent thinking. What are all the ways we might solve this problem, even some of the weird ones? Because, some of the coolest solutions come out of the weird beginnings. Don't shoot solutions down just because they sound wrong. Brainstorm yourself with your team. It doesn't matter. And really enjoy those weird ones. When those really weird ideas come up, really, hey, great thought, great thinking. I love the idea, because that's where the real out-of-the-box innovative solutions come from. Again, be open to feedback. I don't think this will work. Well, why? Of course it'll work. No, don't do that. Why don't you think it'll work? Feedback is just another way to start a conversation about the right way to solve a problem. And be persistent. Don't just give up. I mean, we've all probably been on teams where, that solution didn't work. I guess we can't do it. No, I mean, okay, think Tom Edison here, all right? 4,700 attempts at a filament before he got one that worked. If he'd given up, well, who knows when the light bulb would have come around. By the way, just completely off the side, anybody know what the element was that he went with? Every now and then I'll get someone tungsten, which is eventually what got used for a while. Believe it or not, it was bamboo. Bamboo. Who'd have
Yeah.
figured?
But he never achieved anything beyond 3 hours of combustion. It got
That's
improved.
true.
A famous black scientist, but he disappeared in history because back at the time being black was not good. So the real inventor of the light bulb in the modern day is a very different engineer, and he was black.
That is very true. Because Tesla got wrapped up in that whole mess too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very true and very, very unfortunate. But and I would love to see that stuff come out. I really would, because you're absolutely right. The bamboo only burned for, I think it was about 2 hours, 12 minutes at most. Okay, so just a little side note there. Problem solving, think of them again as Scrum practices. Break the work into smaller pieces. That's refinement. Prioritize. That's just backlog ordering. Research before solving. Refinement and planning. Okay, because when do you solve a problem? Planning. You don't solve it before that because you don't even know if you're going to build it. Experiment, iterate, learn from failures. All stuff that we're all really good at as Agilists. Decision making, same idea. Identify the problem, but here we're not trying to solve it. We're trying to decide what do we want to do with it. Gather information. Be patient. Take your time. Okay. If you need to get your team involved in decision making, like the most common way of doing that is with a spike in a sprint, then do it. Gather all the information you can, give it to your team as a spike, and let them work through it, and then take that back and then sit down with a team and evaluate alternatives, make a decision. Decision making is a lot like problem solving when it comes right down to it. Yeah, better on this one. So the big stuff with decisions, what's the thing you're trying to achieve, right? It's just like problem versus a solution. Don't try to make a decision. Let me rephrase that. Problem versus solution. You want a problem first, then the solution, not the solution first. Same thing with decisions. Know what your goal is first. Then you can make a much better decision about it. And as it says here, don't be afraid to gather information. Give it a little bit of time. Give yourself some time. Consider alternatives, weigh the pros and cons. But here's the really important one. Okay, as a leader, once you make a decision, stick to it. Okay, unless you're absolutely clearly wrong, then it's okay to change. All right, but if you make a decision, stick to it until you have a really good reason to change your mind, because nothing can be less motivating for your team than to see you start to waffle back and forth. Okay, make a decision, stick to it. If it ends up being wrong, you'll fix it then. Okay, but if you're just starting to doubt, but for no other reason than you're doubting it, hey, put that down. Okay, put it in the back of your head, because like I said, it's gonna hurt your team. Last one, delegate. This is when I've been talking to product owners and scrum masters alike for years. Stop trying to do everything by yourself. Okay, there's no reason to do that. Delegation means getting tasks to other people. I know it says assigning there. Assigning might be too tough a word. Getting other people to help you get it done is probably a better way of looking at it. Okay, and some leaders can absolutely, excuse me a sec. Some leaders can absolutely delegate. They have enough power that they can say, hey, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. But even when you do it that way, there's two ways to do it. You can be a manager and say, go do this. Okay. Or you can be a leader and you can say, listen, I need your help on this. Here's what I need to do. Here's why I think it's important. Here's how I think it will help you just by doing it. Okay. Because I recommend to product owners, don't explain a backlog item to your team if there's someone who can explain it better. I mean, it doesn't have to be you. So why not let someone who can do a better job, do it more efficiently, as it says on the slide, do it more effectively, and even maybe more, develop the skills of both the stakeholder and the team in talking to one another and asking the right questions and really understanding what we're trying to do. A big issue I run into with stakeholders and developers is they don't talk very well to one another. They seem to want to go through the product owner, and that's not the product owner's job. So whether you can delegate because of your position or you're delegating because you're a leader, do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to get other people involved, because it's going to help them grow, because it's going to make for a better relationship. It's going to help other people reach that win-win sort of state. Okay. And yeah, of course, do it if you're so overwhelmed that you can't even do your job because there's too much going on. That was weird. Yeah. Okay. I looked at it. I didn't think it changed. So if you're delegating, do it for the right reason. Okay. Because there are tasks that you might want to delegate that you should really look at and decide, does it even need to be done? There's a lot of stuff out there that we give our teams to do that it doesn't need to be done. So before you delegate something, decide whether or not you should really just dump it. You know, if this doesn't get done in the next month, what will happen? That's a tough question. Okay. And a lot of people have a hard time answering it, but I've discovered over the years that there's so much going on any given day in an organization that if one thing doesn't happen, and think about all the things that you're already responsible for that don't happen all the time, and the world's still here, and your job is still there, and you're still getting stuff done. So really take a serious look at anything that you're thinking of delegating. What would happen if it never got done? And my bet is very little. With whatever's left, delegate so that you can free yourself up for that strategic thinking. Even as a Scrum Master, where does my team need to go in the next 6 months? What do we need to learn? How do we need to work? Even as a product owner, you know, I'd love to be a product owner, but you know what? I got to focus on the next product goal and where the next product backlog is coming from and getting stakeholders lined up. And you got to have time to do those things or everything grinds to a halt. So delegation is really important to make sure that the leaders are focused on the right stuff, that the team members are getting involved, as involved as they possibly can. And all of that is going to lead to improved productivity. So really good skills for leaders. Delegate based on employee strengths. Set clear expectations. If you're going to delegate, be clear what you want back. What does it mean to be done? We're all good at doneness. What does it mean to be done? Okay. And offer support without micromanaging if you're delegating. Don't look over someone's shoulder and say, you done yet? Done yet? Done yet? Done yet? Just, hey, how's it going? What do you need? How can I help? Right? It's the same thing I tell product owners to do every day with developers. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? Can you show me what you've got? Just stay interested and you'll get everything you need and you'll still come off as a great leader. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So I'm going to skip that last piece. And I'm going to ask you one other question. Okay. Here's the toolbox: communication, strategic thinking, problem solving. And I apologize, I had to go through a couple of things a little faster than I wanted to. Which one will you work on first? And you can only answer one. You can't pick them all. Okay, there's one answer. We've got 16 on board, not counting me.
It's hard to pick one.
I know it is. It is. And see, that's the allure. And the danger is that if you try to pick more than one, then you know you're splitting your contexts. And the minute you start splitting context and your context shifting, then we lose productivity. So bottom line, the reason I'm asking this question is I want all of you to try to make that commitment to yourselves that I'm going to start with that one and just focus on that one for a couple of weeks. It makes a big difference. So 6 out of 10 said communication. A couple of people got in there strategic thinking. I totally get that. Problem solving and delegation, that actually makes a lot of sense. Those do work better when they come along a little bit later. But communication, yeah, I did kind of line them up in the order that I thought that they work best. And communication is absolutely, positively number one. If you didn't say it, my assumption is you feel like you're doing a pretty good job of communicating anyway, which is cool. Don't forget to keep brushing up those skills, okay? Particularly the clarity and the conciseness. And that's it. And again, I apologize for having to rush through on some of that stuff, but hopefully you guys got some value out of it.
Awesome. So Jim, I know that we have the Q&A session that we're going to have right now be a little bit abbreviated. And then probably once we take a question or two, we can go ahead and put up the NPS page as well so that we can get some feedback. But
Okay.
I've already got a couple of questions from the chat from earlier. The first one that I'd like to address is, I believe it was Maru was asking which skills are not helping or blocking leadership.
Which skills are not helping or blocking leadership?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to pick one or two, but what I would say is it's when people act like managers, when what they want to do is say, you do this, and you do this, and you do this. What you're doing is you're not allowing people to get to engage. You're just telling people what to do and what they're going to do. So what happens is you end up with teams that are very task driven. Here are your tasks, go do your work, let me know when you're done. And the problem with that is it doesn't allow your team to engage the way they should. It doesn't create the self-managing team that you really want, because the minute you start managing is the second they stop managing. And that makes a huge difference to a Scrum team. So I would say just in general, it's hard to nail down a specific skill because a lot of management skills are leadership skills used differently. But the bottom line is the minute you start trying to manage is the minute your team stops. And that has a tremendous impact on job satisfaction, work outcomes, productivity and performance. It's sweeping. It really is. It's huge.
That's a great point. We also had another question saying, what's the most important aspect of leadership? Sounds like they're trying to make you pick one too.
Yeah. The important aspect, not skill, but aspect.
That's what it
Confidence.
said. Confidence.
Yeah. Confidence. Because you cannot lead anybody, much less yourself, if you don't exercise a little bit of confidence that I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this happen. Okay. I mean, this was kind of an epiphany for me too, just a couple of years ago, because after years of traveling and teaching around the world, I maxed out at about 287 pounds, which was not good. Okay. And the minute I had a doctor utter the words pre-diabetic to me, it was time to change things. And over the next year and a half, I lost about 85 pounds, and I've so far kept all of them off. But none of that's going to happen until you start with, I am going to make this happen. This is going to work. I'm going to learn, and yeah, I'm going to make mistakes. But see, that self-leadership is the same thing you would do with a team. When you need to sit down with a team member and delegate a task, you're going to mess it up. But you got to go into it confident, okay? And if you mess it up, well, that's what feedback is all about. And you find out what you did wrong, and you recognize that you messed it up, and you say, listen, I get it, and I'm sorry, and I really appreciate your feedback. Let's try it this way. And that isn't going to happen unless you exercise a great deal of confidence. And I don't mean overconfidence, like you can't be wrong. Confidence that you're going to get it right.
Yeah. I love that. It looks like Brian, you've got your hand up.
We're running out of time. That was my question. And so the point was what you kind of hit there at the end, Jim, and that was how do you portray confidence without arrogance?
Sincerity, and being open, being honest, being clear and concise, not trying to put on airs, not trying to look like you always have the right answer. Just be you, right? I mean, that's what's worked for me really, really well, is just be you. It's like, listen, I'm not sure about this. I'm confident this is the right way to go, but I'm really going to need your help to make this happen. And that's confidence without ego and without arrogance. When none of this happens without other people, I need your help. That goes a mile. It goes 1,000 miles. And the other way to work with that also is, what can I do to help? That phrasing You know, it's something I teach my developers all the time is when you're low on work, the first question isn't what else can I do? It's who can I help?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Little things like that. They're honest, you know?
Yeah. Before we take a few more questions, Jim, can you go ahead and move to that NPS slide so that if people have to drop
Got it.
off, they can do that?
You got it. There we go. There's another.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Okay, so we have a QR code here. This is an NPS form for feedback on this session. So if you guys need to drop off, I know we're coming to the end of our time box here. We would love to have your feedback. It is all anonymous, and it just helps us to tailor these sessions in the future to be as helpful and informative as possible. So we'll leave that up there. I will send it out to those of you who attended the meetup as well as the slides, and we'll have a recording on our YouTube channel. So while I've got that up there, we can go ahead and continue answering some questions. So it looks like Dave, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. So whether we like it or not, the reality, especially in a larger organization, is the managers tend to look at the scrum masters specifically as the managers of the team versus being a servant leader. They don't seem to understand the difference. That being said, when you go and you discuss metrics and performance and what work is getting done, you know, obviously in many cases, they're not going to be happy with the performance. So they want you to manage the performance to be better.
Right.
Now, I know how to get better performance out of the teams, but I also realize in reality that you can't move the teams quickly, because once it starts to seem like, okay, we need to do this because we need to do better, blah, blah, blah. Once you start to sort of tell them what to do, they are recalcitrant.
Yeah.
So therein lies the problem. And you're the point person to that manager. So if that team isn't getting better, you get fired.
Right.
So this is the reality, basically, especially like, let's say if you're a contractor, you're not an employee. They're bringing you in there to get that team to perform better. But again, you can't really manage them. You can only help them, but you can't do it quickly. It just doesn't work. So what is your opinion on dealing with that, which is complete reality? I see it everywhere.
I try to buffer the team from the management, for starters. That's step one. And I'm going to go on a long campaign of, hey, management, here's what we know about how teams work, particularly when they're properly self-managing. So I'm gonna continue to push up as much as I can, asking questions like, what do you actually need? What do you really want? And can you give me some flexibility in getting there? With the team, I'm gonna, and having been there, because I totally agree with you. With the team, my approach is going to be, listen, here's what management needs, and we all want to keep our jobs. So here's what I think we need to do. And then I'm going to start pitching ideas. I've got my top 5 or 6 that will typically double or triple a team's productivity. And I'm going to start throwing them out there and letting the team start pushing back and tell me, well, that won't work and this won't work. And I'm slowly going to wear them down. Nobody likes change. So one of the approaches that I always use when it comes to stuff like this is, let's try an experiment. Because an experiment says, I'm going to change something, but if it doesn't work out, we can stop doing it, which is true anyway. But let's try an experiment. For the next couple sprints, let's do X. For the next couple sprints, let's do Y. Like lower the size of the backlog items, lower the work in process, improve the collaboration. And I'm gonna make it a challenge for the team to improve their own productivity, not because management's demanding it, but because I believe we can. And like I said before, I'm going to do the best I can to buffer the anvil of the management approach to the more subtle, but I think more effective leadership approach of creating a self-managing team.
I liked what you said earlier about the moment you switch from leading to managing, your team will stop managing themselves. I thought that was a great summary.
Yeah, we've all seen and heard comments about power, and when in an absence of power, it shifts to fill the vacuum. Management's the same thing. Management's about power, whether it's positional power or expert power. Um, when management has to be there, people need to be led, whether they are led by a leader or they're led by a manager. People desire leadership, someone to say, here's where we're going, here's why it's important, let's go. And it can be heavy-handed on the management side, and it can be more modern leadership, subtle and motivating, but it's got to be there. And if it isn't in one place, it's going to shift to another. And one example I give, a real simple one, happened to me all the time. I was working at Siemens. I had about, I don't know, I had a department of about 155 people reporting to me. And I'm, as you might be able to tell, I'm more of a leader than a manager. I don't like telling people what to do. I like to get them to do it because it's the right thing. I'm very hands-on. And what drove me up a wall for years is I would walk into a room filled with people that quote unquote report to me, and they would all stop talking. Jim's here. He's going to say something. We must listen. No, I want to listen to you. And oh my, that was a constant battle, because the manager walked in, and what happened is all of the social responsibility and authority in the room got sucked out, and I took it. I don't want it, but that's what happens. It's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, that's very similar to daily scrums, I notice. No matter how hard you get the team to try to have a discussion about the sprint goal, which is what that's really about, they think that the scrum master is the manager and it's a status report. It's very difficult to get them to understand the difference.
Yes.
So on that point, I'd like to say that happens a lot more when they're virtual teams, and especially when you have people geographically located. People tend to get really quiet on calls, right? And you want to break the ice again and again and again until people get super comfortable. And I've dealt with that a lot. And I consistently try to hold social calls where we're not talking about work. Good. But it gets kind of difficult sometimes. It's hard for yourself to kind of stay motivated to have those social calls when you are just trying to get stuff done, but you want to engage people at a different level, right?
Absolutely. It's one of the hardest things you're going to do as a scrum master these days, is trying to maintain a team that is not just remote, but geographically distributed. Because when you start throwing in those time zones, man, it gets rough. But community building is a great move. And I would also recommend looking at psychological safety as a possible factor. Even mild psychological danger can cause people to, I don't want to contribute. I don't want to say anything. There may not be any of that in what you're talking about, because there are lots of reasons why people will be quiet. But that's one of the most common, is they're not sure what'll happen if they speak up, so they don't.
That's a great point. I know Brian has discussed that in a previous meetup that we've done on psychological safety, that when the feedback stops, you should be worried.
Yes. Yeah. You should always be, as a leader, should always be looking for feedback and providing it too. The more people get comfortable being open and honest, professional, but open and honest about how we're doing as a team, the less of a problem that becomes. But there are always people that they carry that around with them. They're just very quiet people. Even in a room of people, they would be very quiet people.
Well, I think that we can go ahead and take probably one last question here. It looks like Jamie has one asking about any suggestions you may have on swaying people. I think that Jamie already dropped, so I don't know that we can get clarification on that. So does anybody else have a question? Or Jim, would you like to field that one?
Did you say swaying?
Suggestions on swaying people.
Oh, okay. So persuasion.
Yeah.
Well, there are legitimately, there are specific skills that you can teach that will help people persuade. the two suggestions that I would make just off top of my head is number one, it sounds selfish, but it's not. The number one question in every human's mind is what's in it for me? So if you're going to try to persuade somebody to do something, to start it from why it's good for them, not why the company benefits or why the team benefits, but why they benefit. That's where you got to start. If you don't touch that, if you try to go, well, we all believe the team is more important, so I'm going to go why the team benefits. Yeah, but they're not going to hear you because the mind is still saying, yeah, but what about me? It sounds horribly selfish, and it isn't. It's just natural. The other piece of advice when it comes to persuasion is don't oversell. A lot of people dig a much deeper hole than they need to. Just put the benefits out there. Say, this is why it's a good idea. This is why it's good for you. This is why I think it's a good, and then just stop. And they're either going to be persuaded or they're not. And let me, if you don't mind, let me attack a slight variation on that question too. And that's about motivation. You hear a lot about, I'm sorry?
Motivation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You hear a lot about motivating people. Leaders motivate people. No, they don't. You cannot motivate a person. Motivation is wholly and completely internal. People are motivated by different motivational keys, whether it's recognition or explaining things, right? I like to explain things. This is why I teach, why I've taught thousands of classes. But we're all motivated by different keys. And there's not a lot of them. There's about 20, 30 pretty common motivational keys. The key for a leader is not to try to motivate someone, but to find out what motivates that individual and then connect the work to the motivation. Okay. So it's a really good idea for any leader to sit down with your team members, find out who they are, ask them what motivates you. Because when you think about it, the way a lot of people try to motivate, it's basically like, hey, I want to earn a yacht for my annual commission. Help me get it. That's not going to motivate someone. That's my motivation. It's not really. I don't care about yachts, but when it comes to persuasion or motivation, they're somewhat connected. It's really important to understand. It's a great place to start from, to understand you can't motivate people. You have to understand what they're motivated by and then activate that instead.
I like that you're talking about activating the motivation, because I think everybody is capable of being motivated. It's not like something you have to give to them. It's something they have that just needs to be unlocked.
Exactly correct. Yeah. And it creates an endorphin release in the brain that you have no control over outside that particular brain. It has to happen completely internally. Yeah. So when you see people trying to motivate others, they might get a short boost of speed, but it quickly wears off because they never really motivated the individual. They motivated the group.
That's great. That's really good. Well, we are 10 minutes over, so I am going to go ahead and close the session. So we would absolutely love to get that feedback from you guys in the NPS form. I will send that out, as well as the slides and the recording once we finish processing it. Thank you all so much for joining today. Jim, thank you so much for your time. This has been really
my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you all for hanging out. I appreciate it, for giving me your time.
Thanks, Jim. It was
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Adios.
Sarah, I apologize if I interrupted you. I was not intending to.
No, you were fine. I normally let it go for about 10 minutes after anyways.
Okay, cool.
The first one we let it just go and it went like 25 extra minutes. I like to give a specific end.
Well, I do apologize. There was just so much stuff in the front end of it. I should have probably trimmed a little bit more. I thought it would.
I know we already trimmed it down.
Yeah, I did. I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. Because normally when I build these talks, I definitely build too much, and then I take stuff out, and I didn't take enough out.
I'm always that I'm going to not have enough content, and then I always have too much.
Yeah, but my wife always tells me, if you're going to serve a dinner, a meal, I'll always have more food than you need.
Yeah.
because there's nothing worse than running out of food. So and I feel the same. There's nothing worse than running out of content. It's like, oh, we're done early. Anybody have any questions? It's like, oh,
Any
shit.
more questions? Any
Yeah.
more questions? Are you sure you don't have any questions?
Oh, I just thought of something.
Can you please give me a question? Yeah, no, I've been there for sure.
Yeah, I think all of us have at least once, and once is enough.
Meant to leave, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove him. There we go.
We're doing a quick bio